You're standing on the first tee. You take the same swing you took 10 years ago, same tempo, same effort, but the ball comes down 20 yards short of where it used to. You tell yourself it's your age. I told myself that too. For 3 winters, I told myself that, and I believed it. Then I found out I was wrong, and I was angry about how wrong I was. Here's what I learned. Most golfers swinging around 85 miles per hour are leaving 20, 30, sometimes 35 yards on the table, not because of their body, because of the driver they were sold. Wrong loft, wrong shaft weight, wrong everything for the swing they actually have. It started for me on a freezing Tuesday morning at a range outside town when a stranger looked at a screen and read me a number that made no sense. By the end of this, I'll hand you the exact formula I trace back to a rule the United States Golf Association quietly wrote into the books in 2004, and to a little company in Denmark that changed how distance is measured forever. And this works for you even if you've played the same trusted driver for a decade, especially then. Let me take you back to that Tuesday. It was maybe 40 degrees out. I had a paper cup of gas station coffee going cold on the bench beside me. There was a younger fellow 2 stalls down with a little orange box on a tripod pointed at his ball. Every time he hit, the box beeped and threw numbers on a screen. I'd seen those before and always figured they were for the pros, for people chasing something I'd already lost. But I was curious, and he was friendly, and he offered to point it at a few of my drives. I hit 5 balls. Good ones, for me. Flush, right off the middle. And the screen said my ball speed was fine, my swing was fine, but my carry distance was pathetic. He looked at the screen, then looked at me, then looked at my driver, and he said one sentence that sent me down a 2-year rabbit hole. He said, "Your ball's coming off too low and spinning too much. That club is fighting you." Fighting me. My own driver, the one I trusted. I didn't sleep well that night, because here's the thing I couldn't shake. I'd bought that driver off the rack at a big box store. The salesman was maybe 25 years old. He handed me whatever was on the wall in stiff flex because, and I quote, "stiff is what most guys play." I never questioned it. Why would I? He worked there. He must have known. But that little orange box knew something he didn't, so I started reading. And what I found was that the whole idea of matching a club to a person isn't new marketing at all. It's old. Older than that store. Older than me. I dug up the history of how drivers even got this powerful, and it turned into a detective story I did not expect. See, for most of golf's life, a driver was a lump of wood. Persimmon, a block of hard fruit tree wood, shaped by hand. Those clubs didn't cheat physics. You got out exactly what you put in. Then in 1979, a company started experimenting with metal heads, hollow steel. And by the late 1980s, the persimmon block was basically dead. By the 1990s, they'd moved to titanium, and the faces got so thin and so springy that the ball started trampolining off the club face. That trampoline effect has a name. It's called the spring-like effect, and engineers measure it with something called the coefficient of restitution. Think of it as how much energy the face gives back to the ball instead of absorbing it. And here's where it gets interesting. The faces got so hot, so springy, that the governing body panicked. The United States Golf Association stepped in and drew a hard legal line. They capped that coefficient at .830. No driver sold to you and me is allowed to exceed it. That cap became fully enforced across the board around 2004, right alongside another rule that capped the size of the head at 460 cubic centimeters. Sit with that for a second, because this is the first clue that cracked the whole case open for me. Every single legal driver on the market, the $400 one and the $600 one, hits the exact same legal ceiling for face spring and the exact same size limit. The face can't get any hotter, the head can't get any bigger, so if the ball comes off every legal driver with basically the same maximum energy, then why on earth was my ball coming off so much shorter than it should? That question kept me up. And the answer is not the part of the driver they put on the billboard. It's the part they never mention to a guy like me buying off a wall. Because the energy isn't the problem. What you do with the energy is the problem. And that's all about two numbers most golfers have never heard in their lives: launch angle and spin rate. Let me explain it the way it finally clicked for me, standing in my garage with a notebook. Launch angle is simply how high the ball leaves the face. Spin rate is how fast it's spinning backward as it flies. And here's the secret the persimmon generation understood in their hands but couldn't measure. For a slower swing, you want the ball to launch high and spin low. High launch keeps it in the air longer so it has time to travel. Low spin keeps it from ballooning up and dying. Get those two right, and the ball carries. Get them wrong, and it dives into the ground while it still has gas in the tank. That's what coming off too low and spinning too much meant. My ball was launching like a line drive and spinning like a top. Worst of both worlds. It was hitting the ground with energy still in it. That's the 20 lost yards. Right there. Now here's where I finally met the company in Denmark I promised you. Around 2003, a small outfit called TrackMan started building radar units, the same kind of Doppler radar the military uses to track missiles, and pointing them at golf balls. For the first time in history, we could see the exact launch and spin of every shot in real time. That little orange box 2 stalls down from me was a grandchild of that idea. And when the researchers pointed that radar at thousands of golfers, they found something that flat out contradicts what that 25-year-old salesman told me. They found that for a swing speed around 85 miles per hour, the ideal launch angle is somewhere near 14 to 16 degrees, and the ideal spin is somewhere around 2,600 to 2,900 revolutions, high and clean. But the drivers marketed hardest, the ones with the tour player's face on the box, are built to launch low and spin low because that's what a 110-mile-per-hour professional needs. Not me, not you. They sold the professional's medicine to the amateur's illness. And here's the first hint of who profited from us not knowing the difference. It wasn't an accident. An entire retail machine was built on selling the same stiff, low-launch, tour-inspired driver to millions of ordinary golfers, because it's cheaper to stock one wall of hero clubs than to actually fit a human being. The fitting knowledge existed the whole time. They just quietly stopped offering it to regular people and started offering it only to the players who didn't need saving. That made me furious, because I'd carried the shame of getting old for 3 years when the truth was I'd been handed the wrong tool and told to blame myself. So I set out to find the right tools. And I want to walk you through the 5 drivers that kept coming up over and over in the fitter forums and the launch monitor data as the ones actually built for a swing like ours. Not the hero clubs, the ones the fitters quietly steer 85-mile-per-hour players toward when nobody's filming a commercial. The first one that came up again and again is the Ping G440 Max. And the reason is almost boring, which is exactly why it works. Ping built the weight low and deep and far back in the head. That does one specific thing. It launches the ball high and takes spin off the sides so your misses fly straighter. For a swing around 85, that back weighting is worth real carry, because it fixes the exact too low problem the orange box screamed at me about. Fitters love it for one more reason. It's forgiving on the toe and the heel, so the days your timing is a half beat off, you still get most of your distance. That's the club that showed up in more "I got my yards back" stories than any other I read. But forgiveness alone doesn't solve everything. Therefore, I kept looking at the clubs built to actually add speed. That brought me to the TaylorMade Chi 35 Max. Now, this is the one people argue about, and I understand why. It has this carbon fiber face and a huge footprint, and the marketing is loud. But strip the noise away and look at the numbers, and the reason it works for a slower swing is that lighter carbon crown. When they move weight out of the top of the head, they can put it exactly where it launches the ball higher and keeps it stable. And the Max version specifically has a draw-leaning setup, which matters more than you think, because the single most common miss for an older golfer is a weak slice that leaks right and dies short. This club fights that slice at the source. Every yard that would have leaked sideways gets pushed back down the middle. And that thought led me straight to the third club, and to the discovery that finally solved my own distance mystery for good. If you've been following this investigation, and you want the whole framework in one place, the history, the numbers, the fitting principles, and the exact sequence I used to rebuild my own setup. I put all of it into a series of digital books called First Foundations, Hidden Leverage, and the Complete System. Everything in those pages is the same research you're hearing right now, laid out so you can work through it at your own pace, at the range, or in the garage, without having to chase it across a dozen forums the way I did. You'll find the links in the description below. Now, I promised you this next part specifically, and I mean it, because right about now some of you are thinking, that's fine for a man with money to burn on a brand new driver, but I'm not spending $500 or $600, and I like the club I already own. I hear you. I was you. So this next stretch is for you and nobody else. You do not have to buy a single thing to test what I'm about to say. You can do it this weekend with the exact driver sitting in your garage right now. The third one is the Callaway E-Lite Max Fast. Pay attention to that last word, fast, because Callaway builds a version of this driver that is deliberately, dramatically lighter than a standard driver, from the head to the grip to the shaft. And this is the exact part the salesman never mentioned to me. The total weight of the club, and especially the weight of the shaft, changes how fast you can swing it. When the researchers put lighter clubs in the hands of moderate speed golfers, many of them gain 3, 4, even 5 miles per hour of clubhead speed with the same effort. Same swing, more speed. Just less weight to drag through the air. For a slower swinger, that lightweight build is one of the biggest free lunches in all of golf. And almost nobody at the store brings it up because light doesn't sound as manly as stiff and heavy. Here's the first thing. Look at the little screw where the head meets the shaft on your driver. If your driver is younger than about 10 years old, that's an adjustable hosel and it has settings printed right on it. Most golfers never touch it their whole lives. You are going to loosen it and turn your driver up to its highest loft setting. Yes, up. Everything in the marketing screams, lower loft goes farther. For a fast swing, sometimes. For your swing, almost never. Adding loft raises your launch and, oddly, often lowers your spin at the same time, which is exactly the high and clean flight we're chasing. That one adjustment, free, costs you nothing but 2 minutes with a wrench that came in the box. Second free thing, tee the ball higher. I mean noticeably higher, so that half the ball sits above the top edge of the driver at address. When you tee it high and catch it slightly on the upswing, you launch it higher and you strip spin off it, because you're striking above the center of the face. Off-the-rack golfers tee it low out of habit and hit down on it, adding spin and killing carry. Just raising the tee and making a small effort to hit up on the ball has given people in these forums 10 extra yards on its own. Nothing bought, nothing installed. Third free thing, and this one made me laugh at how simple it was. Check the ball you're playing. If you're a slower swinger playing a firm, expensive tour ball because a professional endorses it, you're leaving distance in the sleeve. A lower compression ball, a softer ball, compresses more fully at 85 miles per hour, which means more of your energy actually transfers into the ball instead of bouncing off a rock you can't squeeze. Softer ball, more distance for the same swing. It costs less than the tour ball, too. Do those 3 things this weekend with what you already own, and I'd bet money you find yardage you thought your body had stolen from you. That's the part that made me want to shout it from a rooftop. The knowledge was free the whole time. They just made sure nobody handed it to us. Now, I said 5 drivers, so let me finish the list, because 2 more kept surfacing, and they matter for specific golfers. The 4th is the Cobra Dark Speed Max. Cobra has quietly become the value king, and the Max model is built with heavy heel weighting for the golfer whose real enemy is the slice. If your ball starts straight and then curves weakly to the right and falls out of the sky, this is the club built to straighten that out. And Cobra tends to price a hair under the big 2, which for those of us who count our dollars is not a small thing. Same legal face, same legal size, less money out of your pocket. That's a trade I respect. The 5th is the Titleist GT1, and I want to spend a moment here because this one is the industry quietly admitting the truth. Titleist is the brand of the professional. Their name is on more tour bags than anyone's. And even they built a driver, the GT1, that is deliberately lightweight, deliberately high launching, and deliberately aimed at the moderate speed golfer. It's their lightest, easiest to launch driver, and it exists precisely because the data proved that the tour driver was strangling the everyday player. When the most professional brand in the game builds a club that admits slower swings need lighter, higher launching gear, the argument is over. The case is closed. We were sold the wrong medicine for years, and now even they know it. But here's the thing. Even after I understood all 5 of those clubs, even after I turned my own loft up and teed it higher, I still felt like I was missing the last piece. The keystone. The one thing that ties the whole investigation together and that almost nobody talks about because there's no expensive product attached to it. And when I finally found it, buried in the writing of an old club fitting engineer, I actually put my notebook down and stared at the wall. Let me tell you where I found it. There's a fitter and engineer named Tom Wishon who spent decades, going back to the 1980s, building clubs and writing about the science of fitting for ordinary golfers instead of professionals. And in his work, he laid out something he called, essentially, the truth nobody selling clubs wants you to hear. It's this. For a golfer with a moderate swing speed, the single most important number in the entire driver is not the brand, not the face, not even the loft. It's the total weight and balance of the club, tuned so that you can deliver the club head squarely with speed you actually have. He proved that most amateurs are playing shafts too heavy and too stiff for them, and that simply going lighter and more flexible restores speed and squareness that they thought was gone forever. And then he gave the number that finished my 2-year investigation. The optimal way to think about it, he showed, is that you don't chase the professional's low spin, low launch flight at all. You do the opposite. You build the club to launch the ball as high as 14 to 17 degrees with spin held under 3,000, and you get there with the lightest, most flexible shaft you can control. He measured golfers gaining 20 to 30 yards from nothing but this rebalancing. Not a new swing, not a new body. A club finally built around the human being holding it, the way persimmon club makers used to do it by feel 100 years ago before the factories decided one wall of stiff drivers was good enough for all of us. Here is exactly how you use that this weekend, and it's the crown on everything I've told you. Match all 3 at once. High loft, high tee, soft ball, and the lightest, most flexible shaft you can swing without losing control. Individually, each one gives you a few yards. Stacked together, they compound, and that's the 20 to 30 yards Wishon measured, and the 20 to 30 yards that orange box said I'd lost. It was never my age. It was the setup fighting me every single one of those cold mornings. When I finally hit a driver built that way, light shaft, loft turned up, ball teed high, a softer ball on the tee, the number on the screen jumped almost 30 yards past my old club. Same swing, same tired shoulder, same me. I stood there in that stall, and I felt something I hadn't felt on a golf course in years. I felt robbed, and then I felt free. Because that's what this really is. Somebody decided it was easier and more profitable to sell all of us the same hero club off the same wall and let us quietly blame our own bodies for the yards we lost. The knowledge to fix it existed the entire time in the hands of old club makers and one stubborn engineer who kept writing it down while the marketing machine drowned him out. Nobody stole your swing. They just stopped telling you how to arm it. And now you know you didn't get slower. You got outfitted wrong by people who profited from you never asking why. That's the feeling I want you to walk away with. Not shame, but the quiet satisfaction of a man who just found the 20 yards that were his all along. And if you're the kind of person who refuses to keep paying full price for what a little knowledge can fix, the kind who'd rather turn a wrench in the garage than take a salesman's word for it, then you already think the way this whole thing is meant to be used. You don't need permission to reclaim what's yours. You just needed somebody to hand you the map. So here's what I want from you. Go find your driver right now, look at that little hosel screw, and tell me in the comments what loft your driver is currently set to and whether you ever knew you could change it. I'm genuinely curious how many of you have been playing the low setting this whole time without knowing it existed. Type it out, even one word. It matters more than you think, because it tells me how deep this really goes. And if you want to keep pulling on threads like this with me, threads that put money and yards and years back in your own hands instead of somebody else's register, come along for the ride, because we're not just watching videos here. We're recovering things that were quietly taken from us. My next investigation is already underway, and it's about a single change to the golf ball itself, one that a manufacturer buried in the fine print that could be costing slower swingers even more distance than the driver ever did. I traced it back to a testing standard from the early 2000s, and what I found there is going to make you look at that sleeve of balls in a whole new way. I chased this one down so you wouldn't have to blame your age for one more round. Now go turn up that loft, tee it high, and take back your yards. I'm glad you're still here, because this video stops short, but there's more. Inside the Practical Wisdom Circle, I pick up right where I left off with the full formula. You can ask me your own question, and I answer you myself. A real person, not a machine. Practical folks like you are already there with you. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen, cancel anytime, one click, no risk.